Let's talk about loops. So, as promised in the last previous videos, we are going to look at some techniques how you can work with your loops to make some interesting, more varied results beyond what the loop can do, as in what the loop is doing. You can use whatever loops you have at hand to follow along. If you sponsor me on Patreon, you will be able to get lots of loop libraries that I have uploaded recently. Or you can just follow my last couple of tutorials on how to make your own crazy loops if you want to. So we're going to look at three things today. We are going to look at the simpler versus the sampler, which are the two of the sample-based instruments that come with Ableton. And then we're also going to look at just using, what we're going to start with is just looking at using them on the timeline here. So I'm just going to find actually we choose, let's go some of those shorter ones that we did in the first tutorial with only one bar. Okay, so that's going to be quite monotonous if that just keeps going on and on and on. So we're going to look at a few little tricks that you can do. Some of these you might already know, but you might not, so we can just look at that together. So I've just dragged that sample onto an audio track, and by default it's this box is ticked, set to loop, so then you can just grab one corner and then it will just loop forever. So. And it's also set to warp, which means that it will stretch the sample without pitching it to fit to the tempo of the song. So this is currently quite monotonous. So there's a few things you can do. You can go in and select a part of this, and if you hit Command, zoom in so we can just select a small part of that. So if you hit Command J on a Mac, or I suppose Control J on a PC, you see it's made a little slice of that sample there, like it made its own unique little sample, which allows you can reverse it. If you hit that, so then we can see what that sounds like. Oh, here it is. That was not very noticeable, so let's do one of these hits instead and we reverse that. Boom. So that can glitch it up. If you haven't got this by now, or you don't know my videos, I generally use IDM, make IDM music and glitch music. So I'm not too precious with the samples, thinking that I need to preserve their pristine original quality, that I make samples and then I overly process them. Then we got this pitch, as we can do a bit of pitching. And there is a bunch of different algorithms you can use that comes here. So for example, this is currently set to beats, which I suppose is meant to be more for beats. There's other things, there's texture, repitch. I think you can play around with these because they give you quite different results. The only two that I tend to go for is beats or texture. So how beats works, if you're changing the pitch, and obviously if you pitch it up, it will play the entire sample quicker. But then it will take that chunk and loop it to compensate for that. And by default, it's set to ping pong loop. So if I take a longer section like this, and then we pitch it up quite a lot. So you have to do again that Command J thing to make it into its own sample. So we've got ping pong loop, which tends to be a bit smoother, or we can do just loop forward over and over again, which tends to be a bit more robotic, which might sometimes be exactly what you want. So sadly, in Ableton, these parameters you cannot. Well, what am I trying to say? This can not be MIDI mapped to Max for live devices, I believe. I'm just going to try this again because this might have changed for some reason. So I'm just going to create a MIDI track, and I am going to. Actually, we don't even need a MIDI track for this, I think. So we can do. There is a great LFO tool which is for free, which I think is the better one than the ones that comes with Ableton. It's Robert Henke, which is actually one of the founders of Ableton, I believe. He developed this LFO tool. I'll put a link in the description. It's free to download. Where are you hiding? There, which is this one. I go through this one actually in an earlier tutorial, but then it allows you to choose a different waveform, and you can crank the amount up, and then you can map this to manipulate something. But I don't think it actually allows you to go in and map this to the pitch. It doesn't. I think you can maybe map it to a MIDI controller, maybe. But there is another way you can do this. So let's just forget about that LFO. We're just going to remove it. I just wanted to try and see if that worked, but no. So actually, let's do this next. We do this long sample bit. So if you go into this section here, where you can draw in your automation, if you would draw, then you can choose envelope. That's the transpose. I'm just going to do something extreme now so you can just hear the difference. So now you can hear that it's just doing the same re-pitching over and over again. So to create a bit more variety, you can click this link loop. Now, that loop is only 1 bar long, but we can make this shorter, or we can also make it longer. So we have a change that is not divided by that bar. So now, so you can create a bit more variation here by having this loop running independently from the 1 bar long here. We can make it longer, so we can have it normal most of the time. So if we just pull that up, oh no. So we just pull that up to 0, so no pitching. So every so often you get that little squiggle. Now if we go back to here where we can change the algorithm, you can do this with texture, which is, I don't know quite, it rather than doing the looping thing that Beats would do, it's using grains, and I can't explain exactly how that works. So you have grain size, so we can see. I think the bigger the grain size is, the more crude it sounds, and flux is almost like, I don't know if you know what anti-aliasing is, but it's sort of smoothing it out. So it depends on, if you have very little flux, it's going to sound much harsher. And again, these are not values that you can MIDI map to an LFO or some other Max and MSP stuff, or your hardware MIDI controller for that matter. But you can still do this thing here where I set to grain size now, so we can do some automation around that. And we can unlink that loop so that runs at some sort of random length, so we just get different overlap. And then we can do the grain size, and we can also do that with the flux. So we can do that, we unlink that as well, and then yet again we just have that at some other random different size. So the flux is going to change independently from the pitching and also from the grain size. Actually, let's bring back that LFO, because the other thing you can do, you can, just to create a bit more variety, by default it's set to sine wave. If you turn that up, you can see the sine wave, make that a bit slower. But let's do sample and hold, which jumps between values instead. And then we map that to the reverb send. So every so often we're going to get a bit of actually we go in and change the decay time on that reverb so we get a bit more oomph. Okay, so you can see how you can play around with those techniques to use it on the timeline. Now we are going to look at working with, I'm just going to mute that channel for now. We're going to look at working with loops in the sampler and the simpler. And they are slightly different. So shall we start with the simpler? Let's put that there. Boom. Okay, so we need to find the sample. Another. Do a longer sample for this one, which we do. By the way, all these sample libraries you will get if you sponsor me on Patreon. Okay, let's just do that one. Can't keep going forever. And then you click to slice, and then it slices the loop up automatically for you. This is not a full tutorial of exactly how this works, because I think that I'm just not going to talk about that today. So now, when I press different keys on my keyboard, you can see it's sort of playing the different slices. So now it's slicing by transients. That's where you get these peaks, and you can set how sensitive it is. So I don't know what I just did. Make it a bit more sensitive. Or you can slice it beat. See. So now we got some interesting beats going, and then to create a bit of random effect, what can we do? Let's do a if I just draw out some MIDI notes here, I'm just going to do the same one actually. And we go into MIDI effect, and then we use the random one and set how much chance there is. And we can set that to go both up. So you can hear already it's doing lots of random things. You can set this to play through. Actually, should we just do some of these notes can just be a bit longer and some are a bit shorter. Then we can have some gaps, something, and then we can go into here and click that button so we can, the first one I think always want to play, and then we just lower the chance that sometimes some of these notes won't trigger. We set that to think the gaps didn't really work. I think those holes can be filled in with another beat that we just run alongside. Let's just turn these up for now anyway, because otherwise... So we can do play through, otherwise it just plays to the end of that little, or whatever clip you're playing. But if we switch to through, it continues to play. Now, there's an interesting thing you can do, which is to do with this here, where you can do some time stretching. And again, similar to when we were doing it on a timeline, for time stretching, you can use different algorithms, and it's set to beats at the moment, and you have texture, and you have all the other ones the same ones. And again, you can't automate these, which is, please Ableton, in your next version, allow us to do this. It would make us all IDM people very happy. And you can divide or multiply this with by 2. It's not very fast. So you set that to very slow. Now you can hear the ping pong loop here with beats. So if we do forward instead. And then you combine that with the pitch. But more interestingly, you can use texture. So as you can't automate these, my best advice is if you actually create a new, we got an empty audio track here, and we just set that to resample. You hit record, and then you just go for it on the... So now we got a bunch of recording here. We just saw that. So then you can create lots of organic stuff, and then you can blend that in. Let's say we were using the other before where there was just a bit of a chance. Actually, leave that in, and then we bring this loop back again. We can actually ditch that. Let's see if we just play this again. What did we do here? We are. And then we turn that back. So we do that, and then we play that alongside the glitchy stuff that we've just done. And then we can do that LFO trick again. We can set that so it's random, which creates a bit of a smoother curve. It's sort of sweeping in and out, and then we can do on the glitchy stuff there, we can do a bit of reverb, and we can also do that to the delay turn channel. They're just the default ones. Obviously, you can just put in whatever effects you want. So you turn the amount up how much you want, and the control is like the baseline. So if you set that in the middle, it will go from being more, you see what it does. If I turn that down, it will just be low values, or you can do the other way, top. So you can hear we got an interesting beat. Maybe we can mix that with the original one we also had. there we are. We almost got an IDM track going, and that didn't take very long, did it? Did it take any talent to do? I don't know. So then let's just mute these channels for now. And then we're going to look at working with the sampler instead. So here we are going to be able to use a loop here, we will have to do a little bit of an extra step. So we take, oh, I know it. That's a good one. Let's do something from these. So we drag that into the timeline, and then we right click that, and then we slice it to a MIDI track. Beat offset. I don't know which one is which. I got my own one, but I just want to pick one of the presets that you would have. Let's hope that one is. We don't want to slice that per bar. We want to do we want to do eighth notes maybe? Let's try that. Okay, so I can actually, that didn't need to create that original track. We remove that sample that we've dragged in, so now we just got the sampler. And what this has done is to, again, it sliced it across the keyboard, but actually turned it into separate samples. The sampler does not allow you to do the time stretching thing in the same way as the simpler does. So therefore, I think there's a use for both of these, but this one allows you to do other things, like which I think is, so it automatically creates a track where it's just got those slices in there. Let's just set it to loop that bit for now. So you can obviously go in and rearrange these. So we can do, does that work? So we can do that, something like that. We can add in a bit of FM, where you can infuse, in this case, a sine wave. Let's see, can this allow you to do that in the modulation matrix? So here you've got 3 LFOs. They're slightly, the first one is a bit more limiting, the other ones are a bit more free, or you can have an envelope. I rarely use these. I tend to use Max for live devices, but I'm just going to have a look. So if we set it to re-trigger, that's on by default. We want a random one. So you should pick a random value every time. And does it allow you to do that? No, it doesn't. So therefore, we want to use, okay, I didn't think I would, but I'm going to use my custom Max for Live device here, which generates a random value every time. Oh, it receives a MIDI note, got away error message that I don't need because it's not important. So now we can actually map that to this. with that, and then we can use this one, which is also changing the pitch. Is that going to be useful? That's a bit much, I think. We can change the, let's go in and look at all these samples, and then we just make a really tight envelope. And does that work if we loop it now? No, it doesn't. So if we appear. So now it's almost like the time stretching. We've just set the sample to loop, so it's doing that harsh thing. One thing you can do in this that you can't do in the simpler, and also you can't MIDI map it, so you have to use the internal modulation, which is you can't set the loop length. You can't MIDI map the start and end points, but I believe the modulation here is do that, and then we do loop length. And then we modulate the hell out of that. We can set that, see what that sounds like. And also we only want one voice, because otherwise each time it triggers it can actually overlap. You can maybe just randomize that. These a bit. And then we can have one that is, oh gosh, I changed them all, so I have to do that. Command J, so we actually got individual ones. We can got one that is just, it is just doing what it was originally meant to do. I think it's one short, so we put another. So what do we want to do here? We can do just some rapid ones. Boom, boom, and then one goes there, and it can be a bit longer, and then we can have a long one here, and a short one. Okay, and then we keep them as 3, because then they will run out of sync with the ones above. I think that sounds like a mess, doesn't it? But you should probably not play. You should probably not play all those channels at once. Just to have not just beats, let's just find some samples and put on top there, which is a bit more ambient. Where did I put them? In melodic. I haven't shared them with you before, so I'm gonna... That's nice. I haven't shared these with you before, so if you sign up to my Patreon, you will get these. maybe we can just quickly make a bit of an arrangement. So let's say we don't want that ambient pad yet. We don't want that beat just yet. So let's play to there. Oops. So these ones go, and then when it gets to here, let's take that one. Oops. And then we put it in here instead, so we got a bit of control over when that plays and not plays. So we can actually, let's move that whole thing forward. So we can maybe do that something. Stopped a bit abruptly. So we can do similar things with the melodic stuff. And then now you can obviously spice this up, so there's not much of a kick there, so we can then just obviously just play that on top of these samples. So I'm just going to use some random kick that I have synthesized. I think this one is quite loud, but we'll try. Just, when that comes in, we don't need that one anymore. Maybe we can send that off into a washed out reverb or something. Something more melodic that I've made that I can put on top. And then I'm going to finish this video. I'm not going to finish this entire track because it's getting very late. It's not getting super late, but late enough because I need to get up early tomorrow morning. Let's do that. See what, oh no, that's a MIDI track and we don't want that. We want this to sit here. Gosh, that was very loud. Let's not do that. Do the up an octave. Okay, grab yourself a bunch of samples. I'm also going to talk a little bit about next week's video because I have prepared the very basic tools, but some really useful Max for Live devices. Number one, I have fixed a big issue that I had with my random on-off. I'm also gonna share another couple of very simple but still very useful Max for Live devices. So if you tune in a week's time, or something, approximately that sort of time, you will be able to see a new video where I'm going to demonstrate those. I still got a few tweaks to do to them, so I'm going to sort that out during the week. And don't forget to subscribe and like and all those things, because I'm still very much starting out. So if you like what I do, I would appreciate so much if you could just help by doing those things. If you don't like what I do, but you think you might like what I do if I just changed a few things, please don't hesitate to let me know. Much appreciated. A few people have already done so, and I hope that has helped making my videos better, and I'm still working on it. So I hope you're having a lovely week, and please share anything you do. Would love to hear your IDM stuff. It's tricky to find other people making IDM sometimes. So thank you very much. Goodbye.